wonder. But there are times in our lives where the questioning leaves. For me, the greatest period of questioning that I could have ever lived through was when I was told that I had terminal cancer and that I was about to die. And suddenly every unbelief, every question that had been in the depth of my mind that I did not care to deal with came up to haunt me. Is it all real? Is it all real? Or is it a fantasy? Is there really a God? Is his name really Jesus? Is the church valid? Is all of this for real? And part of my questioning had come from being exposed to various aspects of psychology and parapsychology and other fields. And I realized that there's only one place you find the answer, and that is when you go to the Lord. And the Lord came through in such a way that death itself had to stop its process in my body as his resurrection life touched me. And when I was told that I would have only a year to live, I'm here 11 years later, and I know, I believe. So what am I saying to you now? I am saying that there can be those questions, those doubts, and that you and I have lived in a church that we thought would never question. But we hear sections questioning, and it has become difficult for us because St. Paul says, unless the trumpeter blow a clear call, how shall we prepare for battle? How many of you have had your hearts converted at Medjugorje only to find a pastor who was indifferent to you? How many of you have wanted a prayer group only to find others have no time for you? How many of you are struggling and wondering about it all, and you hear all of these diverse voices, a cacophony of sound that is almost deafening, and a continual questioning? And whenever that happens, you can be sure of one thing. The book of Revelation tells us that when Satan shall come in like a flood against the woman and her seed, she will go to be in the wilderness with them. And why is everywhere you turn today, not only in Medjugorje, but in San Francisco, because there Our Lady just recently had an apparition. And I did not even know about it until I went there to the Philippines. And Bert Rivera, one of my best friends, a man I came to love so deeply, a very scholarly and a wonderful man, but a totally committed Christian. And he told me how he had gone to the section of San Francisco where they said the apparition would happen. And on that day, they spent all of the day there, and by midnight nothing seemingly was going to happen, and they'd said there'd be a rainbow in the sky and then she would appear. So at 15 minutes to 12, he said this mob of over 250 people said they'll go wild when Mary doesn't appear. Let's get out of here. And he went home, but his daughter stayed, and at 2:30 Mary appeared. They had the rainbow, and she came down, and every one of the 250 people saw Our Lady. But he said, I missed it, and I felt so bad that I had missed it. Just a few minutes. If I'd have stayed longer, I would have seen the Mother of God. And I went to confession, and I cried to Father Tarantino. And he said, well, Our Lady knows that it's what's in your heart, Bert. But then a few nights later, she was standing there again, and people were seeing her. And they called Bert Rivera up, and they said, Mary's here, come quickly. He put his pants on over his pajamas, grabbed his wife, got in the car. It takes 30 minutes to get there. He got there in 15, and he ran into the garden, and there, he said, was the lady waiting on him, waiting to show him who she was. Beautifully dressed in blue and a white veil. And he said, when those eyes of Our Lady looked at me, she didn't have to say a word. I knew what I knew. I knew he was real. I knew heaven was real. I knew Mary was real. And I knew my life would only have peace if it was totally committed to them. And I want to serve him in every way that I can. I want to be committed to the Mother of God. And I am saying to you, what is happening today? We are having rosaries that are turning to gold. I even blessed a sack in Houston, and 7 of them turned to gold in the sack. I was over at one woman's house, Elaine's house, that I was with over in the Philippines, and her heart had been converted, and she brought a Protestant movie producer over from next door. And he was so skeptical about this thing. He said, I'm not involved in Marian apparitions. And her aunt had given me a sterling silver rosary to dedicate, to bless, that had large rosaries on it. And I'm talking to this man holding the rosary, and while I'm talking to him, my hand burns. I said, what's happening? And I opened my hand, and all of the beads in my hand had turned to pink gold, and his eyes bugged out as we watched the whole thing turn to gold. The next thing that happened, we had 7 rosaries turn to gold, and the maids brought me the plastic ones just in case to bless. Now you say, what does all that mean? I read an article by a man who was skeptical of Marian apparitions in the National Catholic Reporter. He said, yes, I went to Medjugorje. Yes, I stood there and saw the sun dance. I saw every bit of the phenomenon they're talking about. And no, I don't want to believe in apocalyptic messages. And I wished I hadn't seen it, because I'm very uncomfortable because I saw it and I don't want to believe it. And I didn't want to believe it then, but I'd have to say those people are seeing something because I saw what they saw. But I don't like what I saw. It upsets me. But I'm going to tell you that those who are praying the rosary, those who are trying to believe, those who don't understand what is happening in the midst of this world, and those that are worried, has the faith changed? Has there a different worldview? Or is it what we have always believed in, the faith once delivered to the saints? When you hear the message of Medjugorje, it is an affirmation. The God of the Bible has not changed. It is Jesus Christ, the same yesterday, today, and forever. And yes, my child, it is real. When you pray, you'll transform the world. Your rosaries become gold. Why? Because I'm calling you to a ministry of intercession. And when you begin to pray, we will bring down the strongholds of Satan. The war is on. It is being fought in every parish and in every diocese. But we are not alone. Our mother has come to be with us in the wilderness. Many of you know the vision of Leo the 13th. It means his time is about up, the evil one. The tide is changing. We're going to see Jesus on the front page of the newspaper in place of Satan. When I got into the car in Cebu, I just landed, got off the plane, flew to Cebu for a rally. We were going to a rally of a crowd bigger than the group that's here today, with no air conditioning. For 8 hours they had sat there, every seat taken, to pray and hear speakers. There were some very dynamic-looking young Filipinos in the van, and I said, "Who are you?" And they said, "We're movie actors." When they arrived, the crowd went wild, especially the teenagers. And then I discovered that as I listened to these beautiful performers, that 75% of the movie industry in the Philippines have been converted to Christ, and they're changing the media there. And it brings us back to the most glorious thing. Our Lady has said, I have come that you might know that God exists. But if you read ahead in the book, you'll discover we're going to win. My last trip to Yugoslavia, we went to Zagreb. We went in the cathedral. They just had elections. The communists only got 13% of the vote. The parliament met as a body, convened, and without dismissing, marched to that cathedral and received the sacrament to declare that atheism had ended in Croatia. The lines are drawn, and Our Lady is saying, be my children. Pray with me. The last message of Medjugorje, as it was given to us as I left the Philippines, was, you have prayed a little, but you must pray and fast even harder. The battle is becoming more intense. Yes, I pick up journals that are attacking Medjugorje. But I want to tell you, if the enemy didn't attack it, I wouldn't believe it's real. And so, I'm going to shock everyone today. I'm going to end on time. I knew I had jet lag. But I'd like for you to say a prayer with me. We'll say the 3 Hail Marys and the Glory be to the Father. But it is a prayer of Our Lady Mary, mediatrix of all grace, that has been restored by the Archbishop of Lipa. When I met with the Cardinal, the last parting words, I said to His Eminence Cardinal Sin, what would be your final message to people listening? And the Cardinal said to me, he said, Father, when I was a seminarian, I had a devotion to Our Lady. My last days in seminary, I became very ill with a lung disease. I could not make my studies, and my professor said, don't worry, Sen, you've done very well. We will let you be ordained. But he said they had a brand new image of Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, and they sang to that new image put in the chapel. And when everyone left, I remained before Our Lady's image. And I said, if my lungs do not clear by this date, I will know I have no more vocation, and that I am not called to be a priest, and I will not trouble you or the diocese. But Mother, if I am to be a priest, please heal me by that date. And he said, I wrote all of this